Good morning. First, I'd like to acknowledge Chicago Police Department Chief Brendan Denahan. We have some retail partners here from the Office of the Attorney General staff. We have a Chief of Investigations, Lyle Evans, Deputy Chief Terry Scheel, Tom Szymanski, Ron Yarger, Barb Healy, Mario Valenti. I have my Deputy Attorney General of the Criminal, Tim Diamond, Joel Marasco, Chief of Criminal Enforcement Division, Riz Sinar, Deputy Chief, Megan McGuire-Bachman, Assistant AG of Criminal Prosecutions, Haley Bookout, AG Public Integrity, and my Chief of Staff, Nathalie Hudson, and I really want to lift them all up for their collaborative work. Over the past few months, we've been trying hard to alert law enforcement partners, county prosecutors, brick and mortar retailers, online marketplace platforms, and quite frankly, the public at large about the growing problem of organized retail crime. In September, we announced the creation of a statewide organized retail crime task force, but in reality, we had been working way before September in partnership with law enforcement partners as well as some of the national retailers who, quite frankly, brought this problem to my attention, as well as the Attorney General Alliance. The task force brings together law enforcement from federal, state, and local agencies, retailers, online marketplaces, to share information and resources to identify and prosecute criminal enterprises frequently behind these well-organized schemes that can sometimes be mistaken for isolated incidents of retail theft. Over the last few weeks, especially, we've seen a number of incidents of very brazen, violent acts involving retail theft here in Illinois, some in Chicago, some that were noted in Oak Brook, as well as some incidents that were highlighted in California, in both San Francisco and Los Angeles. But the reality is it's all over. It's important to know that these are just the most recent incidents that made the news. And the actual operation of these organized schemes are a lot more sophisticated than might be reflected in the footage of the commonly seen smash and grab group thefts. There's a well-organized secondary market. Our goal is to disrupt the criminal enterprises that engage in the overall scheme and send a message to these criminal operations that we will identify them and end the destruction they cause to our communities. That's why today I'm proud to announce the first major seizure of stolen items of the task force. From early Wednesday evening through the early morning hours of yesterday morning, investigators from my office, in collaboration with our law enforcement partners, executed search warrants at several storage units. To give you a sense of stolen items, obviously we have pictures up, but they don't really do the justice of the amount of items that were recovered. It took a team of 15 AG investigators and law enforcement partners 8 to 9 hours to unpack all of the items that were recovered. Our search warrant derived from information from a Chicago Police Department bulletin that arose from evidence secured in an unrelated CPD arrest. And I really want to thank the Chicago Police Department for their work. We recovered about 4 semi-trailers full of stolen merchandise valued well in excess of $1 million. The merchandise appears to be from a variety of major national retailers, which shall remain nameless because of our ongoing investigation, so don't ask me afterwards when I open up for questions. These items seem to have been stolen at different points along the supply chain. Items recovered include thousands of items of men's and women's clothing, electronics, high-end food items, beauty supplies, items such as hair extensions and other supplies. We are at the very early stage of what is an ongoing investigation, and we will be working over the coming weeks to identify all of the individuals involved. Today's announcement is proof positive that this enhanced collaboration is vital to disrupting the cycle of organized retail crime. It hopefully keeps us from making the mistake of regarding crimes as isolated acts, isolated random acts, when they're actually a part of a larger scheme. I again want to thank all of our law enforcement partners and our retail partners for their hard work and cooperation that led to the recovery and the identification of these goods. It is critically important that this type of collaboration and communication occur in order to catch these criminals and find out the enterprise behind them. Just yesterday, I addressed a group of state's attorneys at the State's Attorneys Association conference in Oak Brook. And there were state's attorneys there representing over 60 counties throughout the state. And I asked some of them, do you sense this as a problem in your area of the state? And many of them said no. And then after I started explaining it, they realized that, in fact, this is happening all over. It is critical that retail establishments and law enforcement agencies alike commit to sharing information, because this is a prime example of how such information sharing can lead to timely action. We have strong reason to believe that if we had not acted swiftly, that the over $1 million worth of stolen items would not have been recovered. We believe our ongoing investigations will yield more information regarding individuals involved in these schemes, the patterns used in this scheme, and the location of other stolen property. I look forward to continuing to work together to disrupt and bring to justice the organizations responsible, not only for the sake of economic prosperity, but for business owners, workers, and consumers that are victimized by these acts of theft and fraud. And with that, now I want to open up for any questions.
Tell us about how these organized retail rings are connected to other criminal enterprises?
Yeah, so, and we're learning more and more about this through our own individual investigations, ongoing investigations, as well as through information sharing. I've attended conferences held by the Attorney General's Alliance where it was introduced to us that they're often tied to money laundering, human trafficking. Oftentimes, we use the term mules, but folks are used to commit the individual acts of retail theft, but they're not really the kingpins behind the operation. And so you can imagine how that can tie into human trafficking and also the drug trafficking and other offenses.
Something that struck me. You think of all these smash and grabs is where all this merchandise is coming from, but you talk about various stages along the supply chain. Can you elaborate on that? Does that mean that, like, trucks that are bringing stuff in are being hijacked or what does that mean?
That means that it's not necessarily all items, and obviously we have with regards to this particular recovery, we're still investigating, but it's not necessarily items, all items that were stolen in the retail establishment. It may have been on their way to the retail establishment. It may have been items stolen at other points of the supply chain.
Can you address those complaints that some of those who are arrested are often walking right back out the door? But is your involvement now going to up the ante in the charges?
Let me say this. I've been trying to promote this notion of understanding this as a larger scheme than there's been a long ongoing debate about felony, misdemeanor, retail theft thresholds. Let's be clear that the acts that I'm talking about are not acts that really lend itself to that debate. These are very brazen acts where, quite frankly, any prosecutor that knows the Illinois compiled statutes can find plenty of charges to levy against these criminal actors. So, I'm not here to debate that notion of retail theft from the standpoint of misdemeanor to felony thresholds. But what I'm here to say it's not necessarily about just those isolated small acts. We're not talking about somebody who's trying to inconspicuously put something in their purse or something like that. We've seen some of the brazen acts, but that doesn't necessarily represent every methodology used to steal these items.
You mentioned search warrants. How many search warrants, and can you give us any locations where these actually stored you? And some of these pictures look like it was the back of, a semi-tractor trailer. What are the search warrants executed?
I'm not at liberty to share that right now. We have an ongoing investigation, and it's really sensitive at this point. The reason we're talking about it right now, I think it's important to just highlight the importance of information sharing between law enforcement and between retail establishments and law enforcement. I've been talking about it for months, but until now, we didn't have the type of evidence to demonstrate how organized this is and the magnitude of it.
Can you say if you hadn't intervened where these would be going? Would they have been going out of state? And what's the role of someone who is shopping online? Are these showing up when people are looking like, hey, I want to get a deal on a designer purse for Christmas? What's the culpability for anyone?
Well, I won't talk about where we speculate these items were going, but I will talk more generally that we do know that as I advocate for communication between law enforcement cross-county boundaries and collaboration across county boundaries, I also advocate, and we're also aware, that it doesn't stop within the state boundaries. So that, to answer your question, in many cases, it does go beyond state boundaries. And with regards to the online marketplaces, we do know that many items are resold on online marketplaces. That's why we called upon the industry, and we've had several meetings with representatives of the Internet Association and the common online marketplaces that you're all aware of, asking them to do their part, to use the intellectual resources they have to detect illegal items that are being put for sale on an online marketplace. If you think of like an appliance, for example, if you go to a store, you're offered a warranty when you buy a new appliance. If there are new appliances being offered for sale on online marketplaces and no warranty is being offered, that's a signal that this it may well be a stolen item. You could look at comparative prices for new items, and if something is so out of whack, that's a signal that it's a stolen item.
Are you getting any cooperation from the eBays or the other online, OfferUps or whatever, to help detect and, recover some of these items?
Yes, we're in the early stages of that collaboration. So we brought them together for the first time, I say in September it was. We're in the early stages of that. This is something that's evolving for law enforcement nationally. I've spoken to colleagues in California, AG Bonta in California, AG Nessel in Michigan, and they're sort of following our lead and establishing similar task forces within their state. So it's evolving the way that law enforcement is being pulled together to collaborate and share information, because we can't do it alone. You heard of the recent incidents in Oak Brook, for example. After a collaboration between the Chicago Police Department and the Oak Brook Police Department caught some of the perpetrators, Chief Kruger called me, and it's all about information sharing, because it doesn't end with the apprehension of the individual or individuals who actually went into the store. We want to trace it up further than that.
Could we hear from Commander Dinahan, perhaps?
Oh, I'm sorry.
There was another incident, wasn't there, just yesterday on the Mag Mile? It has a lot of folks wondering if it's impacting even, are folks scared away? What are you seeing about shoppers? Are they still coming back to the Mag Mile this season?
So I think that's kind of the point that the Attorney General was trying to make. So to answer your question, are they coming back? They want to feel safe, and they want to come to a place where they feel safe to shop. And hence, obviously, the more work we can do as a team to address, and what he's talking about is it's organized retail crime. So that's why the task force was created. Chicago, we have our own team, and that's what led to this over $1 million seizure of items.
But you even had something yesterday as well.
Yeah, something yesterday as well. And then once again, the more communication between all of the agencies here and all the people working. So it's all these guys around us, obviously, that do all the work. But that's what's going to help address this. And there's so many different layers to this organized retail crime. Obviously, you're talking about somebody going in and stealing items. But then the purpose of this is to conduct long-term investigations that start with not just tracking tracking those offenders who did that, but then where are the goods going, as you guys were talking about, and then even larger than that, than following the money. So the more the police department can work with the Attorney General's office and the total task force, the safer people will feel, and people will be feel better about coming down and shopping. So that's the goal of this.
Back your the downtown team, that were down there for many months and then taken away again. Are they back on the Mag Mile in force?
If you go down to the Mag Mile, you will see that there is the officers are down there. We have officers in cars, we have officers on foot, and the superintendent's put many different layers in place to ensure that people not only feel comfortable, but that the shoppers feel comfortable shopping down there. So the police department is down there on the front end to protect the businesses, but then these guys are the back end. And I think the message from the Attorney General is the retailers have stated, hey, this is a major problem, organized retail crime. And if we put this team together, this is kind of like a team of teams. And as he spoke, a lot of these things just start with a beat officer, and that's how this started. So I really want to compliment everybody who's standing behind me, but also a beat officer who made an arrest and said, hey, there's something wrong here, there's something different. This guy's got some stolen items in his car. Then we get our retail crime team involved. And then once again, then the communication really starts with the Attorney General's office, and we're able to recover these items before they go missing. So it's not simple. It's extremely complex. And I think that this, as the Attorney General has mentioned, this is just a really good start to show what could possibly happen is everybody is communicating and coordinating and working as one team to address this. So once again, to kind of go back to your original question, yeah, the goal is to start looking at these as long-term complex investigations to make the community feel safer, the retailers feel safer, and this team has done a lot of work to do that.
Chief Dinahan, what was the original arrest for?
The original arrest was for a gun, and then it led to all of this. And I'm not going to go too deep into the details, but once again, like I said, it's very astute beat officers who said, there's something else going on here. Let me reach out to somebody else, and they knew that we had just put Chicago just put an organized retail crime team together, and then that team with the critical reach flyer reaches out to the Attorney General's office. And none of this is easy. It sounds like, well, this communication should be easy, but it's not. They're crossing, like he said, they're crossing county lines, and they did a remarkable job to get everybody involved very quickly to make sure that they were able to recover these items and they didn't just go walking away.
Do you know how many people you are looking for related to this? Because you
One-
made no arrests related to this bust, correct?
There's one person in custody that's how this whole thing started,
The original.
related to this incident. And as the Attorney General mentioned, very active and ongoing investigation. So I'm not going to mention, the scope of it or who we're looking for.
Can you, quick question just on this. When was this person arrested? How long ago was that?
What day was it?
Sunday.
It was Sunday. Yeah, it was Sunday that he was arrested. And then, like I said, immediately interviews start, and based upon some information recovered from a vehicle, these guys did a remarkable job. As the Attorney General mentioned, we have evidence that these items would have gone walking away very quickly without this team executing all these search warrants, writing multiple search warrants to recover all these items. So, remarkable job, very quickly put together. Once again, just by a lot of coordination, a lot of communication, a real team of team efforts.
The Neiman Marcus grab ago last night, 16-year-old arrested with the help of a citizen tackling and grabbing him. Are these gang organized? We're hearing they're recruiting the teenagers, the juveniles, to do a lot of these crimes because of the potential for lesser penalties. Can you talk to us how the gangs are working, and do you believe this is gang-related organized retail crime?
So once again, as the Attorney General kind of mentioned, that's why it's organized retail crime, it's criminal networks, and there are gangs involved. So these gangs, operate, and whether it's selling narcotics, and then this is just another layer of possibly the gangs, what they're doing, organized retail crime, once again to make money. Whether the gangs are specifically recruiting juvenile offenders, that's a lot of intelligence information that once again we're just kind of getting into. So I can't stand up here and say that that's exactly what the gangs are doing. We've arrested adults as well. What we can say is that these criminal networks, they're not just out there on the corner selling dope. They're doing this, money laundering, and many other different layers the Attorney General kind of hinted to.
This is all the message to them, basically what?
I think the message is that we, like as the Attorney General mentioned, that organized retail crime, we know it's a major issue, and as he was alluding to, this isn't just a simple retail theft that people are talking about. This is organized criminal networks, and the message is that there's a task force in place, and you have remarkable officers who are communicating that we are taking this very seriously, and we know these are extremely complex investigations, and we are going to investigate them, to the best of our ability.
I feel like we're missing out because there's so many of you here to hear from anybody else that would want to weigh in. Is there anyone representing the stores? Is there anyone that's here from the stores? No? That would want to?
I think at this point, because we're talking about this specific investigation, we don't want to go there with that type of specificity. As the chief said, this is ongoing, and we really want to not only be successful with the seizure of these items, but with the overall investigation, and we don't want to compromise that. The reason of this, again, of even announcing this, is just to highlight for those who would have information, be it retailers, be it law enforcement. We have that already with the Chicago Police Department. We have it with the Oak Brook Police Department. But these acts are being committed throughout the state, and they can be dismissed as isolated acts instead of an organized effort that would lead to storage of over $1 million worth of merchandise.
As you're expanding this and reaching out all across the state, do you have any idea of how many cases that have happened? I don't know whether you've gone back and looked at it this year, or maybe just since your task forces.
I used to know those stats, to be honest with you, but I could probably get you some numbers from industry groups that have tracked this. And I should say that there are, you've asked about hearing from retailers. There are retailers that have dedicated a lot of resources internally to the investigations of these organized crimes, and that's why we were able to start working with them earlier in the year before we even announced a task force. So they feel the pinch, and so they've invested into the investigation of it internally themselves.
Can we, just as we're interpreting, some of these look like they are in storage facilities. Is that where they were found, I presume, that evidence photo? And then the other is the
That's
one
right.
that looks like it's in the back of a semi-tractor trailer. Was that one packed, ready to go and move out of Chicago, out of state?
Well, I spoke to the 8 to 9 hours of the removal of the items, what our team was doing. They didn't just do the investigation work to find it. They did the hard labor of securing the items. And the reason I mentioned the 8 to 9 hours, because the pictures just don't do justice to how much stuff it was. So if you think about 15 people spending hours unloading stuff, right? It's a lot of items that were recovered.
Can you say, did you already say, sorry, what are some of those items?
Yeah, so electronics, sort of high-end food items, stuff probably that I wouldn't buy, hair extensions, beauty supplies, and stuff like that.
Can you talk to us about the
Leggings.
front end of this at all? We hear so much about, especially with the Mag Mile, the same stores targeted again and again. We hear about it after the fact. Working together, have any of these been prevented? Any of these mass smash and grab type thefts?
I don't know if the chief might be able to talk about that better than I.
So you're talking about prevention. That's why, the superintendent had the police officers down there in the beginning. So that's something that's real difficult to measure, right? It's like, how do you measure if you prevented a shooting, if a guy in a car drove away? You don't know. So what we believe is when we do have our officers, down there in those areas, and if offenders or crews are coming down and they see that there's several officers out there, then they're driving away. So I believe there has been prevention. I know, and then specifically there was an off-duty officer who witnessed something, guys getting out of a car, throwing a rock, and once again, he took immediate action, said he was the police, and the offenders fled. I mean, that's one specific prevention, but you're trying to measure something that's very difficult to do. If, we have officers down there, and bad guys come down and don't commit act, that's obviously very difficult to measure, but we do believe we have prevented some. And then these guys are the back-end system where we really got to look into these complex investigations to see if we can remove some of these offenders from the street to prevent more from occurring.
Details on that arrest.
Past the presence of CPD, like a tip that, hey, they're going to hit Neiman Marcus today. That's not happening right now as far as.
We have intelligence information, and I'm not going to obviously go too deep into all the intelligence and how we gather it. But we do have intelligence information that we're always monitoring to see if that is occurring. And then obviously the simple solution of just, more boots on the ground and trying in deterrence.
The prisoner was arrested Sunday. Where they were arrested?
We'll get that offline. I don't have the exact address of arrest, but we
He's
can.
been charged.
He's been charged with a crime, and we're still, this is a very active and ongoing investigation. No, not now.
So if this works its way up the food chain, what, like, are we talking RICO? Like, what kind of charges would be involved in such a complicated?
That's a good question. It's a little bit outside my scope because I'm learning all these extreme layering of retail charges. So I don't have an answer to that right now. I don't know if the attorney, if you have, but there's.
It's premature to answer that question. It depends. Charges are dictated by whatever evidence that we have, whatever type of a scheme it could be. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that there is a tension on this at all three levels of law enforcement, at the federal, state, and the local level. So there's a lot to our disposal in terms of potential charges.
So potentially, if there are conspiracy-related charges that could be brought, it could potentially go federal, which would have tougher penalties, perhaps?
We've got some pretty tough penalties at our disposal at the state level too, but we're all working together. We're all working together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.